Kate Ferrian, welcome to the Heal with Kat podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for our chat.
We were just chatting a little bit about how relatable your story is, not only for myself, but I think for many women in the community. I think a lot of women that I know in my life, and even just in kind of acquaintances around my world, are women that are in the corporate world that are really unhappy with feeling fulfilled and purposeful in the corporate world. And yet they love their paycheck, but they want more purpose. It's like this crazy duality of like, what do I survive or do what makes me happy? And I just am really excited to hear a lot of your wisdom today on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to share it because it's a really hard decision to take that leap and go out on your own or do something when you've known a certain type of world most of your career. So really excited to share.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like what I'm seeing like spiritually over the last like couple of years is a lot of people in general realizing that they can be, a CPA and also spiritual. They can be a doctor and incorporate, holistic spirituality. Like I think we're coming out of times where everything is very black and white and we're starting to awaken to our innate spiritual nature and truth and also have a more cerebral logistical role in the society.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And it was a journey for me that I went on and ultimately said, yeah, this was a spiritual journey. And how do you bring that into the corporate world when in years prior it has been kind of taboo? And so it's been fun to, especially the teams that I've led, bring some of that to it in my own way that leads people, down their own path of thinking about what else is there.
Yeah, well, take us through your journey because I'm so curious to know more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to share. So I'll start on the corporate side of things. I was in corporate leadership for over 16 years. I was really leading the operations, building infrastructures for different staffing companies here in the Twin Cities. Loved my career. Didn't think I was even going to leave it quite as quickly as I did after 16 years. But ultimately, on the personal side of my story is where my business came out of. And so I was married for almost 10 years, divorced now 5 years ago. It was a pretty easy divorce, the way divorces can go. We were ready to kind of go our separate ways. Because of that, though, I jumped into another relationship, and that relationship started as verbally and emotionally abusive, and about a year in became physically abusive. That really sent me on this path of kind of figuring out who I was, sitting in that situation going, wait a second, I've built this amazing career. I'm strong. I'm independent. I'm hardworking. How did I get into this situation? Ultimately, I had a really great support system of women around me. And then before I even knew I was on this journey, I actually started working out with a personal trainer. And little by little, by pushing through weights that I didn't think I could, it started building back my confidence. From there, I started with doing yoga. I was doing life coaching, traditional therapy, somatic therapy. I'm like, I have seen every coach or practitioner under the sun in the last 5 years. But I was looking for help, one, in order to get out of that relationship, but two, more importantly, to start really peeling back the layers and understanding myself enough to know how I ended up in that situation, basically both those situations to begin with. And so through that work and through that experience, I knew that I had to take that story and I had to help other women create a space for them to be seen and heard and supported, regardless of what they're going through, whether it's a cruddy relationship, whether it's a divorce, whether it's the loss of a job, or like we were just talking about, that point in time that you've been climbing the ladder so long and you go, wait, there's got to be more to this. And how do I take that leap? And so ultimately, I left my corporate role last July. I sold my condo. I downsized to a 1-bedroom apartment, and I started my business Simply Become It to help other women do the same thing.
That is so inspirational because I think for at least we were talking about this before we started recording, but I got divorced 7 years ago. And the scariest part was not the divorce itself. Mine was actually very easy as well. We were just kind of like, okay, like I guess this isn't working out. And it was quite mutual. But it was actually the step after the divorce of like, oh shit, what do I do now? I have built my vision of my life to look a certain way and to be a certain way. And now the snow globe is getting totally shaken up. And how do I even envision what life, like, how do I get creative enough to think about what life is going to feel or look like after this? Did you feel that too?
Yeah, I definitely did. And that for me is ultimately probably why I jumped into that next relationship so quickly, is because I really didn't know myself outside of my career and my relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like I think like so many women, you're supposed to go to school, you're supposed to get married, you're supposed to have kids and get a job, and that's what you do. And so it left me for sure in a place of wondering. And I also think even coming out of a divorce or a hard relationship, there's not always a lot of support out there, education for women to understand what are all the pieces I need to be thinking about now. What's the finance side of it? How do I manage that side? Housing, and what options do I have for housing now that I'm, walking out of this on any difficult situation. And so yeah, it's definitely a time where we need to rally around women and provide support so that we can all get to that next step and really really become who we were meant to be.
I mean, I could have totally vibed with a women's community post divorce or going through divorce because it's interesting too. I feel like I went to the most therapy and needed the most help when I was in survival mode in the relationship. But then when I left, I thought, oh, well, I'm free now, so I have nothing to worry about. And it's like, actually, that's when the processing happens. That's when the grieving in different ways happens. That's when I think actually a lot of the survival mode came flooding to the surface of how I had been living in such survival mode. Did you go through that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it really took me, so coming out of the divorce, it really took me actually being in the abusive relationship to come out of survival mode. I mean, and it wasn't even right away, right? I spent a year in that relationship and it had to get to a point of physical abuse before all of a sudden I was like, wake up, Kate. What is going on? How are you in this situation? Because I used all of the same tactics that I had used my whole entire life up until that point, that my foundation was completely shaken.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because this is something I talk about with my other coaches and practitioners. A lot of times we can't get to that breaking point or that change without something pretty traumatic happen, when we then decide that we're gonna, really, really pull back the covers and figure out ourselves. So
Yeah.
it is when we've lived in survival mode and developed these behaviors throughout our whole entire lifetime, it's a really hard thing to start peeling back those layers one by one and figuring out how to change those behaviors.
Couldn't agree more. What's the most interesting thing that you learned about yourself leaving those relationships and really doing that inner work on yourself?
Yeah. I think there's a few things. The first thing that stands out for me is, because I was in the corporate world too, and I was so proud of my career and I considered myself strong, independent, hardworking. That's also what I was shown in my family dynamic, had a strong, independent, hardworking mom. And I think through the journey, what I realized is that innately, I am actually a really soft and intuitive and
Yeah.
creative person. And that anger is one of those things too that was easy. It was an easy emotion for me to come to in a lot of my life, and I'm really not an angry person. And so I think that was the biggest thing that came out of it for me, was realizing like who I truly was and what those characteristics were so different than how I had shown up in my life for the first 35 years.
I mean, I just got so happy for you when you said that. I work with a lot of women in family constellation therapy who come in with that hyper independent, similar to me, oldest daughter, parentified at times, like either raised by single mothers or just kind of lacking like that full parental support in certain ways. And just kind of having these like really unique experiences in their families where they have to put on this really hyper independent, I've got it, I'm a bad bitch, I'm a, whatever. And I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
you are a bad bitch, but also underneath that is like a lot of softness. And I just love when women can get to that place in their journey where they're like, I'm a lot more nurturing and creative and feminine and sensitive than I've been allowing myself to feel for so long.
Yeah. It's the truth, and you have to come to it. I can remember my ex-husband at one point had said to me, as we were when right before we were getting divorced, is like, where was that? Where's the soft Kate that I knew? And he would call me Katie, because that was a childhood name of mine. And I remember at the time being so angry that he just wanted this sweet, soft, little girl. And it took me a while. It took me healing through that to go, but actually that is who I am. And I can be proud of that because I can
Yeah.
still be ambitious and resilient, but I can also be that have that softness in me as well.
Good for you. I love the yes and. The statement yes and is my favorite. Like, yes, I can be an angry woman, but I can also be the softest, sweetest woman you've ever
Yeah.
met too. Like, don't
Yeah.
categorize me based on the trauma that I'm going through. And I think on that topic too, a lot of ambitious women that you see in the corporate world, they're really praised for being resilient or, independent or strong or non-emotional, right? Like it's that typical corporate like person archetype where it's like be the masculine woman, in the company. But really they're just kind of surviving in this disconnection of their intuition. So I'm curious, with all of your experience leading women and teams in the corporate world, how do you help women begin to distinguish between what true strength is and what is high functioning self abandonment, and how, I know this is a long question, but I'm kind of talking it through as I ask it. And
Yeah.
how do you help them remember their inner true self that gets to exist at the same time?
Yeah, yeah. I love this question, and it is I've actually been on a little rant lately too, even about how women as coaches and when we're marketing to these ambitious women, how we do that. Because what I'm seeing, and I've done it myself and in my own content, is say high achieving, where I'm working with the high achieving women. And more recently, I've even thought about that and gone, whoa, wait, wait, I'm getting rid of that phrase. We can say ambitious because as women, we can totally be ambitious and still be badasses and do all those things. But high achieving just again puts it into an external validation category that we have to achieve something in order to feel worthy. And so that's one thing that I'm really focused on in my content, in my wording, and helping women just reframe some of those things and the way we refer to ourselves. So I also think there's this huge difference between inner strength, and I ultimately, even strength is a word, right? Like I like to call it our inner confidence, because confidence is something that we all know that term, but a lot of times we think confidence is that boastful, really loud, and aggressive type of confidence. But what we're talking about here is that inner confidence, that inner knowing, and that inner strength that we need to come back to and find our truth. And
Mm.
so I'm a big believer that we actually each already know what that truth and what that inner confidence is. A lot of times, though, again, we're covering it up with behaviors and we're covering it up with all of the actions that keep us busy that aren't allowing us to sit in silence enough to remember it and come back to it. And
Mm.
so it was interesting. I had a good friend. We were chatting. She's going through some career stuff and she wanted to talk to a few of us and, get our opinions. And we're talking through it. And she kept coming back to kind of what she wanted out of the situation and where she wanted to go. And at the end, I said, you're asking us all these questions, and you're getting opinions from everybody else, but it truly sounds like you know exactly how you want this to play out. And she kind of sat with it for a minute. And as we were walking away from the conversation, she's like, you're exactly right. I absolutely know what I want. And it's like sometimes we just have to be reminded that we are our own inner compass and get quiet enough to do that. So one way that I do help women do that through my 90-day journey, the reason I set it up the way I did, it is set up on the premise that we are spending 5 to 10 minutes on ourselves every single day for 60 days straight. So it's not just one on one coaching, it's all about sitting in that peace, sitting in that quiet, and doing these practices and exercises that actually allow us to come back into our inner truth and our inner confidence. And so, a lot of times, what I tell people is these are not thinking exercises, these are intuition exercises. So, if any of these practices are taking you more than 5 or 10 minutes, you've now moved into using your mind instead of using your intuition. And even if it's something where the practice you come up with one word or one little phrase and that's all you put down, that's amazing, because that came from your inner knowing of what you needed to come up in that moment. So the 90-day journey is really set up to actually build this muscle of remembering and finding that inner confidence and inner strength within us.
That's really powerful. Like I can already think of like 5 or 6 different women that I know that work in the corporate world that are really wanting to shift out of it. Yet there is that challenge of needing the paycheck and needing to, all of the things, the structure. And yet this is so feels like it's so supplemental, like a way to say you don't have to lose that great, beautiful, feminine, powerful, confident part of you when you go into this corporate structure that wasn't made for the natural part of who you are. It also makes me think of something that I hate to see in the corporate world, and I experienced it a little bit in previous jobs, is this competitiveness between women, and this almost like there's so few room for powerful women within a corporate structure that as soon as a powerful woman comes in, she feels like she has to be the only one, and there isn't room for other powerful women to be in that as well. And they almost create such like a cult or a silo that then makes other people feel so pushed out of this circle or whatever. And I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I mean, if you're coming from the corporate world and you're now teaching women how to combat that, what are some of the things that we can be mindful of? Hey everyone, Kat popping in during the episode today to share that I have something so exciting to announce. I just launched a brand new series of meditations on Insight Timer, the world's #1 meditation app with over 31 million users. I'll be releasing 10 new meditations every month now through August. And the best part? They're totally free, including downloading the app. The guided meditations on Insight Timer aren't just about ancestral healing. They're designed to help you understand how inherited patterns, pain, fears, or choices show up in your everyday life, your relationships, your self-worth, parenting experiences, or even your health. Each one gently helps you untangle those threads so you can move forward feeling more grounded, clear, and connected. Just download the Insight Timer app, search my name, Kat Dow, or click the link in the show notes below. Make sure you're subscribed to my email newsletter to get updates every month on the new meditations coming to your phone soon. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I can remember early in my career, that is exactly, I like to explain it as it just felt like women were like climbing over each other constantly, right? Like there wasn't support, there wasn't collaboration. It was whose voice can be loudest. And there wasn't enough room for everybody. And I personally, something for me shifted in my career. I can't even tell you what, because it was probably a few years into being a leader. And I definitely was. I was one of those women right off the bat who was like, all right, you're in here, you got to work hard, like you got to get stuff done. I'm in a startup mode and running these companies. And ultimately, like if you're not helping, you're hurting. So like you got to get out of the way. And there was a shift for me where at some point, maybe 4 years into my career and leading people, where I went, there's got to be a different way here. And I can't even attribute it to one single thing, but it was just one of those moments where I was like, you know what? I'm working hard, I'm burning out, but if in order for me to keep climbing and keep going after my ambitions, I need to become a teacher. I need to be able to lead these people. And so from that moment on, it really shifted. And that shifted for me my way of how I collaborated with other women. I mean, my goal was to really bring women into the folds and let's do this as a team and work together versus having to climb over each other. And so I do think, I think from what I'm hearing, I think there is still some of that mentality out there. I do think it's a hard one because I always question like how many great leaders we have who can make that shift and make it so that this isn't a competition and that women aren't having to climb over each other. And ultimately, I think it does really start with leadership. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a leader at the top of the rankings. It means that there's got to be a leader within a group naturally who says, I'm done doing this and we can do this differently and work together, and that they can lead by example regardless of their title, to show that they can be a collaborator and a team player and that they can bring other women into the folds and support each other.
Well, and as you're saying that, I'm sitting here thinking that as women, we're so naturally intuitive. I mean, we're so naturally empathetic and intuitive that I wonder if women really realize in a corporate world that the vibes never lie. We can feel when you're saying one thing and when you're doing another and you're not being authentic with your word. Like women we just feel other women so strongly, and we become kind of energetically intertwined with their energetic world and their energetic being. And, I feel like I wish I could have gone back in some of those harder situations where I felt very excluded, and really trusted that I was what I was feeling was right, that I could trust that what the vibes that were going on were not actually in the highest and best good of everyone. And yet that can also be a really sticky place to navigate. How do you go? What do you do from there when you're like, I'm not safe here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. Somebody has to be brave enough to be able to say that and then stop it, right?
Yeah.
And it's a hard one because in corporate, like I mean, right? They call it drinking the Kool-Aid for a reason because most people will just go along with it because they think they have to. And so, yeah, it's a tough one because it's a place where I think a lot of people don't feel safe, and that's a really big deal to not feel safe in a place that you have to spend a good majority of your time every
Mhm.
day.
How would you coach a woman in a corporate role who feels that their voice and their intuition is being suppressed? And how would you help them navigate speaking up when something is not, if there's a process that's not working, if there's a system that's not supportive? Like, how would you coach someone through that?
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I'm maybe not the greatest example because I've always been a truth teller, and so I've always been one who's going to speak my mind regardless of whether for some reason for me the fear was never there from a corporate perspective. I was definitely somebody who was willing to stand up and really protect the people that I led and protect the rest of the team. I always say if somebody had a problem with leadership, they came to me and I was the one who would then go fight the battle for them. Also a reason why I burnt out in corporate because you can't do that. You've got to help teach other people to fight their own battles. So I think it goes back to helping women find that inner confidence and really trusting in themselves because here's the deal. There's two things that are going to happen if they don't speak up. They're either one way or the other. So they're either going to speak up and their truth is going to be heard and appreciated and accepted and they'll feel better because of it, or they're going to speak up and they are probably, and they might get not listened to and ultimately may, I mean, worst case scenario, lose their job. Both those situations though, whichever one is meant to happen is going to happen. I think I'm a big believer that this journey, when we don't learn a lesson, it's going to keep coming to us. And so my coaching through that is just making sure that they're really speaking their inner truth and that it's not coming from a place of fear or scarcity or a behavior that is trying to keep them safe that ultimately isn't healthy. If they see something that's going on in their jobs that they really truly don't feel right about or feel like it needs to change, I mean, my coaching would be let's find that inner voice for you and inner confidence and be able to do it in a respectful way, but ultimately speak your truth.
I just love that this also gets to be the spiritual journey, because we can't discount that the jobs that we choose and the bosses that we have and the coworkers that we surround ourselves with, they have such an impact on our environment and our health and well-being of our experience in our careers. And I mean, who's to say that you didn't choose this job in order to shake something up so you could find your voice again? And maybe in many lifetimes you never had a voice and this is the way you're finding it. Like, I just think I'm so inspired by these conversations because it really just opens up the possibilities of what the spiritual journey can look like, even when it's not slapped on, this crystals and intuition, like it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be that to be spiritual. I feel like what you're telling me of what you've been through was deeply spiritual, and yet it doesn't have to look like a high priestess,
Yeah.
in the mountains or anything.
Yeah, it's the truth. I mean, never before going through this, like I didn't grow up with spirituality or religion kind of. I was, never introduced to any of it. And it didn't take me long as I was going through these last 5, 6 years to go, oh my gosh, this is totally a spiritual journey. And from the outside looking in, I mean, it was. I've had a career that is in, staffing industry, which is a really masculine industry. Like I'm pretty analytical from that standpoint. I love checklists and spreadsheets and all this stuff. Like you would never think about the intuition and the creativity and all those things going through it. But what's so fascinating to me is all of the things that have led me here to really feeling like I've found my purpose and being able to share my gifts with the world, which is really building infrastructures and foundations, and that my voice can really resonate when I'm passionate about something and empowering women. And I look back over my career and I'm like, my strengths have been utilized my whole entire career, even in the corporate world. And that in itself to me was so incredible. And I use human design in the work that I do. And that was one of the tools that allowed me to finally put words to what I knew of my strengths and who I was. And as I looked at those words and went, "Oh my gosh, my whole career has completely aligned with this." It was such an impactful moment that it was a tool I was like, I have to use this in my work because other women need to be able to see this on paper and get validation for themselves in that.
I just love that. What is your human design?
Yeah, so I'm a 4-1 generator.
Okay. I'm a
Yeah,
5-1 reflector.
nice.
So
Yeah.
I have the My Human Design app by Jenna Zoe. Do
Mm.
you know?
Uh, I don't have that app, but I have another one that I use online to
Yeah.
to run profiles. And what I love about human design, I actually dive deeper into the channels. And because the channels really have like some very strong energies in our innate strengths, and they differentiate us a little bit more. And so I basically use the strengths profile to build my clients a profile. So I like to say it's mentally, emotionally, and energetically. So we look at energetically the human design, mentally the Myers-Briggs, and then emotionally the Enneagram. And by bringing all of those together, it really starts to shape and give us a really good perspective holistically of who we are.
Oh, I used to know this girl who did tarot readings at corporate events. And I just had this like intuitive vision of you going to corporate events and like helping women understand how to thrive more in the corporate world
Yeah.
do you already do that?
So, I mean, I haven't worked with corporations, but this is work that I brought into all the teams that I've led at the different companies that I
Yeah.
have because one, as a leader too, it was so helpful for me to understand from that detailed of a level of who my team was, what their strengths were. I was always a leader who wasn't going to go, "Oh, we have this opening for a position." It was more like, "Hey, we've got this amazing team and we're growing and we need to maneuver people around, but let's maneuver them around based on their strengths versus what the role, actually is." I'm just a big believer that when we work in our strengths the majority of our day, like everybody's happy and it makes us feel good about ourselves.
That and also we get to like own our truest self. We don't have to feel like we have to constantly change who we are to fit into the world. I was just having
Yeah.
this conversation with my fiance who works in a corporate structure, and I was saying, I wonder how many people feel that they have to change who they are to fit a job and they are so unhappy when there are so many other companies out there to work for that are more aligned with their values. And he actually ran through ChatGPT his values and he said, based on my values and what I care about, what are the top 10 companies that are a corporate-ish structure that you think that I might enjoy working for? And I was like, see, babe, look at all these companies. You would thrive in this experience, But when you're sitting in front of a desk all day, you're just, it's like, yeah, anyways, I don't want to like
Yeah.
speak for his experience, but I just think there's something so cool about what he did with ChatGPT, where he just like put his values in and said, based
Yep.
on what you know about me, where should I work?
Yeah. Isn't it? It's incredible. I have two thoughts on that. One is values. That is one of the tools that we use in my 90-day program. And honestly, for me, it was one of the tools that allowed me to leave one of the jobs that I was at. So I worked for one company for 10 and a half years. I like to say I grew up there. But as I started going through this journey, I started like going, gosh, like things don't feel aligned. I don't feel like myself anymore. Once you start looking at other aspects of your life, career is a really hard one, especially for ambitious women, right? Like it's usually the place where we actually just cover up all of the poor behaviors that we've developed because we think we're achieving something and we can keep going that way. And so it was really my values work that allowed me to go, wow, if I look at my values and I look at the company values and the leadership values, I'm no longer aligned. So of course I'm butting heads with the other other leaders when I'm seeing things completely differently than they are. And it ultimately gave me permission to be like, you know what, it's my time to look and move on. And then the other one is ChatGPT. This kind of work, I think it's so amazing. So I do use AI quite a bit in my work in terms of building profiles. So I we do those strengths exercises and understand the strengths, and then each client gets a profile of all their strengths on paper so that they can see it. And then once we've gone through the 90-day journey, same thing. I use a lot of that information and give them this coaching blueprint because we've bubbled up all this awareness around their strengths, around their limiting beliefs, around where they're at and where they want to go from every aspect of life. And so it really allows me to give my coaches who are in my program a starting point with clients versus actually, spending 3 to 4 sessions with them just getting to know them. It really allows them to start from a point of, hey, I know who this person is, what's been holding them back, and how I can coach them to best, try and change some of these behaviors.
I just know that there's women listening to this that are like, that's me. I really want to talk more about Simply Become It because we've been kind of chatting around it and about it, but take us like deeper into it. Like, how is it going to support the women listening to this episode and what can they expect, in these practices over 60 days? Like, what are they going to get out of it in their investment on themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So I knew going into Simply Become It that I wanted to do something differently. Like I said, one of my innate strengths is building foundations and infrastructures. I knew from the get go that I didn't want to do just one on one coaching. I wanted to really bring women through a journey where we're bubbling up this awareness. I truly believe that awareness is the first step in our self discovery journey. If we're not aware of all these things, we can't make any changes. And a lot of times, like I said, I think at the beginning, I was unaware for 35 years of my life, not understanding how my behaviors, how the generational trauma, how the environment that I lived in had really impacted me so incredibly much to be in two relationships that were really unhealthy. So, Simply Become It was born off the premise of this 90-day self love journey framework. It's all based on 5 to 10 minute practices every single day. And so we hit on a few different things. The first part is all around building confidence through our innate strengths, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. Then we go into practices to really, really hone in on why we are so incredible, what these strengths do for us, why we're proud of them, how they bring light to other people. Then we go into a 2 week period where we look at kind of every area of life, where we're at and where we want to go. And then lastly, we tackle the limiting beliefs that are holding us back. And so there's different practices in there. That takes about 4 weeks. Once we get up to 60 days, we do some visioning and we talk about it's not just about achieving that next thing, but we do select an area of life that we want to focus on. And we really focus on what do we want to look like? What do we want to feel like? What are the boundaries that we're going to put in place to protect our energy in this area of life? And then from there, I'm actually building a team of wellness practitioners and coaches. So because I value one-on-one coaching so much, but I wanted to build up this awareness, I've got a team of coaches. So I have a strength trainer, I have a health coach, I have a parent coach, and I'm continuing to add on to that team. But then clients select one of those coaches and they go into the 30 days of one-on-one coaching with that coach. So they really get this holistic kind of approach to it's almost some coursework, it's some individual work, but we do this in cohorts of 5 women at a time. So they have the support of each other. And then along the journey, we meet once at the end, once at the beginning, once at the end, twice in the middle. And I bring in actually different speakers to talk on different things like finances, on styling yourself, because as you're going through this transformative journey, you're becoming a new person, somebody that you maybe didn't know before. And what do you want that person to look like and feel like? So we bring in speakers at different points, and then each of the sessions that we do, we bring in all the different ways to take care of ourselves. So we bring in a lot of somatics, whether we're doing some yoga, some meditation, stretching, weight training. And then along the way, I've actually curated this gift box of items from other women owned businesses. And each of the items correlates to one of the practices along the way. And so clients get to open that up as well. And then the last piece to it is there's a curated Simply Become It playlist that goes along with this journey that was curated by a DJ here in Minneapolis that really follows all the emotions and the kind of valleys and highs that we go through. And it's really that all around holistic experience.
So thoughtful.
Yeah, it's a fun framework, and ultimately what comes out of it is a lot of clarity. It comes with, anybody. This journey is really meant for somebody who is, if maybe we've been let go of a job or we are leaving corporate and think about what we want to do, but we're not quite sure where to go. Any type of big life, transitions, divorce, breakups, empty nesters, things like that, because it really just brings together all of these pieces to help us remember or maybe even find ourselves for the first time after being in some of these situations where we've had to focus on somebody else.
In a safe community, yeah, which
Yep.
women need so much right now, especially.
It is so important. I think I had 3 girlfriends and then a couple of the coaches, who I've become really good friends with along the way. Like, had I not had them by my side, I don't know where I would be right now, trying to come out of that abusive relationship. And so I think that's the other thing is sometimes it's so hard for us as women to ask for help. And if there's any message I can give is it's okay to ask for help. And these life transitions and really our lives, we're not meant to do this alone.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how we've lost our tribal mentality as a society, but especially as women. Women have become so unsafe for each other. We're all trying to survive in certain ways, especially within the corporate structure. But really, as I'm like taking in everything you're saying about simply become it, I'm just really kind of circling back on something you said earlier, which is that women are finding their value again. Women are finding that they're actually more worthy than they've ever probably believed that they have been in a world that said you need to change who you are. And you're saying, actually, you don't need to change who you are unless there's something that you want to improve on. Like if there's something that you can get better at, like we're all for that. But like you
Yep.
don't have to change who you truly are inside to fit the world. And it really is then zooming me out more about this scarcity mentality that we go through as women, that there's not enough for us, that, there's never enough money, never enough opportunity, never enough men or partners or whatever it is. And I'm just like, oh, it's so great that you're doing this work.
Yeah. Yeah, it is such fun work. I mean, I know, to be able to see the impact that it's had for myself going through the journey and how amazing I feel, I'm like, gosh, I want to share that with other women. There is no reason why any woman out there should not be able to look at herself and go, you know what? I'm incredible. I have these innate strengths. I am so incredible and I can do whatever it is that I want to do and not what anybody else has told me that I need to do. I'm going to say it's a magical feeling and to be able to share that and guide women through this journey back to themselves, I think is a really it's a big honor.
I mean, it's you're a wayfinder for people in this life, which is so incredible.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the generational programming for yourself, and I kind of want to touch on that. Feels like there's a thread that we can go into with that.
Mm.
I'm naturally curious about that because of what I do with family constellation therapy. But
Yeah.
I've just really like learned for myself on the healing journey that every time that I looked at myself through one lens, there was another, like there's so many lenses that we can look at ourselves through. There's the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, the mental. But then there's kind of the ancestral, which in many ways influences all of those parts of us. And in a deep way, we inherit these things. Epigenetics is the study of nurturing and nature. So it's like our predisposition and also what we're raised in. We just don't kind of realize like how much that shapes us. And it wasn't until I found family constellation therapy that I fully started to understand why I became the way that I was at the time. Do you mind opening
Yeah.
up about your generational story with it all? What you discovered?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. This is something that I do touch on because it's a tough one. It's a tough one to peel back these layers and start to really look at where we came from and how we were developed and that the environments that we grew up in really had so much impact on us. And so I give a keynote and I talk about that generational trauma and the generational patterns that ultimately I'm trying to break. And so I'll go back to, my divorce I was actually the person who was verbally and emotionally abusive because in the environment that I grew up up in, that's what I saw a woman does. She is powerful, she is controlling, and she speaks her mind and she gets her way. And so that was the type of family dynamic I grew up in. My mom was very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive, not to my brother or I, but in her relationship. And so when I walked into then the second relationship and I basically said, okay, so I don't want to be my mom in this situation because that obviously got me divorced. What if I flip the script and I just avoid and I don't speak my mind and I take it. Well, that got me physically abused and emotionally abused. And so by peeling back these layers and really coming back into myself, I was able to go, wait a second, I'm not my mom or my dad. I am me. And these are the characteristics that I have. And what that dynamic was of a relationship is not what I ever want to carry forward into my life ever again. And this is deep work that we do on that front because it's not easy. We've been, again, society has sold us on the fact that our family of origin is our family and that family is the best thing, and you don't walk away from family, and everything has to be about this family. But if you're somebody who's grown up in a really dysfunctional family dynamic and can find the courage to be able to challenge that and walk away from that, I think it's really important because it allows us to break some of those generational patterns. But it is hard. It is a fight every single day because a lot of times there is still that little girl inside you that says, yeah, but it's my mom, right? And that's a tough one. So it's a constant battle every single day to continue to do the work to remember who you are and bring yourself into your life and really make those conscious choices to fight against those generational patterns that are no longer serving you.
Well, first of all, I have to commend you for just sharing so vulnerably about your experience and the experience that you went through in your marriage and your relationships and also with your family. So I know that, whenever I tell people what I do for a living, they either hate it or they love it. They're either like, I need that, or I don't talk to me about that at all. It's
Yeah,
such a sensitive topic. So I just really
absolutely.
honor like your truth and all of that. And
Yeah. Thank
also, this is exactly what we deal with in family constellation therapy. We're looking at the family dynamics of you and your parents, and that is the portal into understanding who came before them, who came before them, who came before them. We oftentimes in family dynamics, we will mistaken love and loyalty. We will think that being loyal to people means that we love them. That is not the definition of love. Love is unconditional, the true definition of it. We can love people and not be in relationship with them. We can love them and not feel loyal to them. But that loyalty is such a survival and coping mechanism for other
you.
things that we've experienced, that fear of separation, that fear that we're not going to get connection, or even just like a chaotic household. So that's really a topic we could talk about forever. But I have helped a lot of women who come to me and they're like, I'm very successful, but I'm very masculine. And it's because I had X, Y, and Z, very successful mom, or they call their fathers weak, or vice versa. Like there's this weak, strong mentality between the parents, and the
Mhm.
safety was with the person who was more predictable than the other, and it's kind of, we get into that and I'm like, girl, like you're all of it. You can be all of it and you still don't have to be loyal to the way that they do things. You can write a whole new story and you don't even know it.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
truth. And it is because, I mean, the generations before us, like a big piece of a relationship for them was the power dynamic, right? Like it all makes sense when you look at generationally how life has happened and what women have had to fight for their rights and things like that. It's truly incredible. And I mean, for me, I was able to look back in my own family and go, well, yeah, if my brother and I have had these experiences, I can totally see where that came from my mom and dad. And oh, I can see where my mom on this side had experiences from and patterns from her parents and vice versa. And you really can keep tracing it back. But the thing is, at some point, somebody has to say enough is enough.
Hmm. Yeah. And I can see how Simply Become It would be that crescendo of, all right, I know what I went through, but like, how do I move forward from here? And I imagine that the women in your community are also networking with each other, supporting each other. Are they all Minneapolis based, or are they all over?
No, it's all over. So I do both in person and virtual. And so the cohorts are set up for 5 women to go through it together because I just think 5 is like a nice number where there's you can get to know each other enough, but everybody gets a little time and space to do that. And throughout the journey, we create different conversation along the way so that we are creating that community and that women have each other to really bounce things off of.
I love that. For the woman who's listening, who is kind of silently asking herself, who am I if I'm not achieving, fixing, like who am I and am I getting lost in this corporate world? What would you want her to know?
Oh gosh, so many things. um so the one thing that I really, really want her to know is that she is enough just as she is. And I'll tell a quick story. As I was leaving my abusive relationship, he was moving out of my house and I decided to go on a retreat. And I was being first day there, and this was all kind of new to me as to what I was doing. And I had been meditating a little bit, but not a lot. And she was doing a meditation on finding a mantra. And as she kind of led us through it and talked about, what you're going to listen for is you're going to listen for that really, really soft voice. It's not going to be the loud one screaming at you. It's going to be the soft voice. And we sat there, we meditated, and all of a sudden all I heard was, I am enough. And the tears just started rolling down my eyes. And it was like, so the message that I needed to hear at the time. And it is, if there's anything, I want women to know that their worthiness is not based on their external achievements. Like their worthiness is there and has always been there. And it's their time to just reclaim that.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Where can people connect with you, find you, inquire to work with you, all the things?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at Simply Become It. On my website, www.simplybecomeit.com, or Kate Ferrian on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Kate, this was an amazing conversation. I feel how uplifting it's going to be for the women out there who are in the in-between of figuring out how do I be true to myself and also survive and make a living in this world, and how do I navigate life and all the things. I feel like a lot of women are going through that right now. So I just hope that your wisdom, your experience, and all of the things that you've learned, I really hope it's touching the hearts of everyone listening today. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for letting me share. It was such a fun conversation. And yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys, if you liked today's episode, don't forget that you can rate, subscribe, and review. You can also share this with someone in your life who is navigating all the things that we've talked about today. And make sure to send them Kate's Instagram or LinkedIn or website so that you get to connect with her, your friends get to connect with her, and they get a light at the end of the tunnel in their corporate healing journey. All right, guys, see you next week.